Beck and welcome to my April wrap up. I think I read 7 books during this month. I also put one down, so I'm going to run through them all. I will start with the book that I put down or that I DNF'd. I don't know why I keep doing this to myself because I saw this book and that it was connected to romantasy and I was like, oh, I'll give it a try. And that is The City of Gods and Monsters. And I mainly tried this because it had monsters, supernatural creatures and demons set in a city, and I expected some kind of investigation to be happening, and it just turns out that the writing and the characterization were really poor, and I DNF'd it at 7% because I was so angry at it. It essentially follows Lauren or Loren, and she is very vulnerable. She takes medication, but she's been living in this city for basically her whole life, and when she's out one night with her 2 friends, which was written very poorly, I was surprised that there were 3 people at the start of the book. When she's out with those friends, she's saying that she hasn't brought her medication with her, so why would you forget that when you've been taking it your whole life? And secondly, if you're out and you know the city is dangerous, like deadly dangerous after dark, wouldn't you arrange for someone to come and pick you up? Wouldn't you pre-book a taxi? Like, wouldn't you do something? No, that is not what these girls did, and then they get ambushed. The ambushers only run away when they hear police sirens and one of the friends gets kidnapped. And I just found it completely ridiculous as a premise. Then it got even more ridiculous because it jumped into Darian, and he's somehow a crime boss at the age of 23. He's ignoring texts from his sister because he doesn't have the emotional baggage to like deal with it right now. The texts are about his passed away mother, so you'd think that would be gravity enough for him to actually motivate himself to reply. He just seemed very flippant about his personal demons and very cocky and arrogant about his job. And I knew that he'd be that domineering, protective, cocky, arrogant love interest, and I hate that trope. And it usually shows up in fae, but it does show up in paranormal romance. And this was leaning very much into that paranormal romance space, especially with the setting of supernatural creatures and demons. And I just found the main character, the woman, to be ridiculously vulnerable, to the point where if you went in her direction, she would fall over, no questions asked. And that is just incomprehensible and so frustrating to me. So like I said, I got angry, I put it down very early, and I just wished that I found a book about a demonic city that was actually good. Thankfully, I then picked up a book called The Silver Blood Promise, and this is a new epic fantasy book, and can I tell you, this book was so much fun, and I am just delighted that I had a great time with a new fantasy book. This one follows Lucan Gardova. He is a card sharp, so he's a bit of a gambler, he's a bit of a bluffer as well. 7 years ago, he had a falling out with the academy that he used to go to, because when he was in a duel, he'd finished the duel and won the duel, turned his back, and his opponent attacked him, and in his self-defense, he's killed his opponent. So upon that happening, he was expelled. His father took the academy's side rather than his side, so he was also disowned as well as expelled. So he's really just trying to make a living by himself. When someone from his past comes into the story and says, look, your father's been murdered, this was the note that was left on his body, and then he not spirals, but he is then launched into going to investigate his father's murder. Because on the note that his father scratched in blood before he died, it says Lucan's name, it says the name of a city, and then the name of something that he's never heard of before. So he's going to investigate what the heck is going on. His investigation leads him to the city of Saphrona, which it says is a fabled city of merchant princes where anything can be bought if one has the coin. And in investigating his father's murder, he accidentally kicks over too many rocks and realizes that there is a conspiracy afoot. And he just keeps getting himself further and further wedged into this conspiracy when he really only wants to know who murdered his father and why. And so I love that this developed that murder mystery plot, but at the same time it built up our main character, his investigative skills, the fact that he was a bit blunt, but that was also partly his strength as well. He was a bit impulsive, but enough that you could understand his motivations and root for what he was doing. And I also really liked Flea, the thief that he is paired with, because it very much had that mentor aspect to it. So Lucan is like mid-20s and Flea is 11, and I really liked that duo. Somehow it just worked so well, and I just like that she called him on a lot of stuff too. So it had a great tone, the pace was so quick, it didn't leave me behind either though, so it made sure to set the foundation, build things up, and then go in a new direction, so you weren't kind of lost and going, wait, what's happening again and who are these people? So I really appreciated it for that. I really am excited about the sequel, which comes out in October 2025, and I just had a great time with it. So it's a 4-star fantasy, it's an excellent book, and it's one I would highly recommend because it was just fun, and my partner's reading it right now because I was raving about it to him, and he is having a fantastic time with it as well. So try this one if you can. Then I jumped on the bandwagon for a reread, and that would be with Wondersmith by Jessica Townsend. And I was reading these so that I would not only refresh my memory on the first, second, and third book before the fourth one came out this year at the end of April, I also wanted to take notes and film a reading recap. So whoever also needed to catch up could go and watch that video instead of pushing themselves through 3 books in rapid succession like I did. So I'll link that recap if you are very much interested in continuing the series with the 4th book, Silverborn. But as for my feelings on Wondersmith, which is book 2, this one is very much about when Morrigan gets put into a group called Unit 919, and then the group are collectively blackmailed. In addition to that, there are also people going missing that Morrigan's mentor, Jupiter North, is investigating but not really getting much traction. And then with the exception of 2 close friends, Morrigan is dealing with judgment and isolation based on the magic system in this book. And overall, I found that because I was pushing myself through this because I had an end goal, I think that took away some of my enjoyment, so I would discourage you from doing that. Leave a lot of space if you want to do a reread. But I did really like the themes in here of trust, friendship, and loyalty, and there was an element in here that displayed manipulation, and it was almost a message or an undertone of, look, bad people can do good things and good people can actually be bad people. It depends on how they are perceived and how you are manipulated into perceiving them. So for a kid's book, I really appreciated and liked that message, and overall I would probably give this a 3.5 stars. Then I continued on with more middle grade because I'm bang in the middle of my Trials of Apollo reread. So I ended up finishing The Tyrant's Tomb, and I think that's the 3rd book potentially of the series out of 5. In particular, this one centered empathy and unquestioning self-sacrifice, and I just find those themes beautifully overwhelming, and I love that we are seeing the characters that have been built up in books 1 and 2 now kind of putting their foot down and going, this is what I stand for. I really enjoyed that aspect of this book, although I have said in a previous video that my star system rating, it feels like it's shifted and changed a bit, and so when I initially read this series I was giving each of them like 4.5 stars, but in this case I gave Tyrant's Tomb 3.5 stars, and I think that's just because my ratings and my taste have kind of minutely shifted, because this is still worth a reread. I'm honestly really enjoying myself, but it's not like a 4-star new fun favorite like Silver Blood Promise was, and it was not a 5-star best favorite of all time kind of read either. But I think my 3-star, 3.5 star category has grown quite significantly, so you might see a lot of ratings falling roughly within that space. And I think because my star system rating has shifted slightly, like that's why it's going to happen. After finishing that one on audiobook, and I lied, it was actually book 4, not book 3, because the next book that I finished is The Tower of Nero, and that is the 5th and final book in the Trials of Apollo series. So you might notice a trend because Wondersmith and Tyrant's Tomb and then Tower of Nero, all of them are middle grade books, so they're technically for kids. I would say like 12 and up rather than, you know, young kids, but still kids. So I am reading also outside of my targeted audience. However, I also did give this book 3.5 stars, and again I still really enjoyed myself. Apollo is the main character. He's a god that's been thrown down from Olympus by Zeus. He's become a human boy named Lester, and Lester has to gather with the other demigod children. He has to gather the oracles back because they haven't been getting prophecies, and there are various events going on. There are emperors causing absolute havoc, and that's what they're trying to do: defeat the emperors, restore the oracles. So I loved the culmination of these 4 books in the 5th and final one, and I really feel like the ending did itself justice. It didn't kind of fizzle, it stuck its landing, and I really appreciated that. And I feel like Apollo really learned a lesson in that he said he'd become a human life hoarder, in the sense that he was looking at all of the friends he'd made and he couldn't anticipate any of their lives ending. Or as a god, he'd just click his fingers and not really care. But it's like he grew back his empathy because he no longer feels that life is expendable. And so he's ideally going to take that back to Olympus and then change the minds of the gods up there who have also lost their way. After thousands and thousands of years being gods, you can see why they've lost their way. I just really like this series and I cannot wait to continue reading more in this world. I think next I'm going to do my reread of the Magnus Chase books, which is a Norse mythology set of books in kind of the same world with someone who is linked to the main characters in the Percy Jackson books. Then I continued on my reread with Hollowpox, and this one was a 3 stars, so I didn't quite like it as much as Wondersmith or Nevermore. Nevermore is the first book and it's by far my favourite one, but this one is probably my least favourite in the series, and I think that's only because it took like a third of the book or a bit more to actually get going. I think that's because it was setting up all of the politics, but it felt like the pace really slowed down, and that was quite unfortunate because I was trying to get motivated and pick this up and I just did not feel like reading it when I'd put it down. As soon as I picked it back up again, I was like, oh yeah, that's where we were in the story. I remember. But while I was reading this, if it was put down in another room, I would just not think about it. And like I said, this one focused on politics and also equality, and the author wrote it, I think, during times of COVID, so you can really see the influence and impact that made on this book, in the sense that there is a virus called the Hollowpox, and that's, you know, the title of the book, and it's affecting Wunimals who are sentient animals. So they look like animals, but they have thought processes and speech patterns like people. And so because there is an easy physical judgment there, it means that people can really easily write them off if they decide to. And the Hollowpox virus is really helping them and facilitating that kind of perspective. And so it's about Morrigan and her friends and the society fighting back against that viewpoint and also trying to find a cure. So I liked that element of it and I feel like it was very well developed, but at the same time, it just felt like not a lot of other stuff was going on in order to pull me through the plot. So that felt a little bit unfortunate. But as far as middle grade books go, this feels very situated in its own well-developed world. I really like the magic of this world as well. I love Morrigan and her friendships. I like the perspectives and the different characters that add different nuances to the story, in the sense that they could add tension, or they could make Morrigan question things, or they could just provide us support. And I just really like all of those facets. So it's a great series, and that's why I wanted to reread it in time for Silverborn, which is the 4th book, which I haven't yet read, but I do plan to read potentially during May. So keep an eye out for my May TBR. Now, we've come to the point in the video where I might be telling a little white lie, because I said that I finished 7 books during April. However, I am currently filming this with a few days left of April, and I'm currently reading 2 books, but I know I'm right at the end of both, like significantly at the end. So these will definitely be finished by the time that April finishes, but that was not enough time for me to film my wrap up and edit it and everything. So the reason that I wanted to bring that up is because I am currently reading Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins, which is the prequel book about Haymitch and his Hunger Games, the 50th Hunger Games, that takes in double the amount of volunteers. It's very much setting up elements that occur in the actual trilogy. So what I like about this book, okay, we'll start with what I like. I like Haymitch and his observations, I like his development, and I really enjoy just the genuine normalness of him, which I don't know how to quite explain, but almost when there is a book with a protagonist that has to do fantastic things, they almost rise to that occasion and become fantastical themselves. And in this sense, you can really tell that Haymitch is just in a situation that is life and death and he doesn't want to be there. And he's doing his best to not only survive, but to mess up the system as best he can. But if any of us were put in that situation, we would probably react the same way. So I really appreciate the attention that Suzanne Collins has put to that perspective, because it feels very relatable, but it's obviously a highly unrelatable situation. Unfortunately though, because it is a prequel, I don't feel the emotional investment in this book than I felt in the Hunger Games, like that trilogy, because yes, it's got a longer form to develop everything and to set things up and for things to unravel. But when I'm reading Haymitch's book, and obviously characters are dying because it is The Hunger Games, I just feel a bit emotionally removed. I don't know what it is, maybe because I'm expecting them to go and I'm only interested in Haymitch, but the first half of the book was very much that discussion, the setup, the introduction to what the Hunger Games is, and it's almost like they got into the arena in the second half and that's where everything is happening, and it's happening fast, but I also just don't feel like I have emotional investment in the characters. Like, I'm seeing them die and I'm going, oh, okay, that was sad. So it is a good book. It's very descriptive, it's very grounded, but at the same time, I'm probably giving it a 3 stars. And I'm a bit disappointed because I was expecting it to grab me a little bit more emotionally and it just hasn't. I guess because I've seen so many people's stories on Instagram and social media and they're all bawling their eyes out, and I'm like, I just don't feel that. I don't feel like anything should be cut from this book either. Everything that I've read feels necessary in developing to where we are now. And I've got an hour of the audiobook left. And honestly, it's just like, okay, it's fine. But I feel like I could have not read this and not really missed out either. And then you will be proud of me because the last book in this wrap up is Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. And my goodness, I just love this book so much. I adore it. It is one of my favorite books of all time. And rereading this has just given me so many emotions. So basically, what can I say about this? Because it's the 3rd book in the Farseer trilogy. First book is Assassin's Apprentice. And I would highly recommend this series because it is such a beautiful, clever, slow burn fantasy book about Fitz, who is the bastard son of one of the princes. And at the time, he's like 6 in the first book. Obviously, he ages up significantly through the series. I think he's in his mid-20s in this book. And the crown can't let him go because he's a liability. He'll be used against them, but they also can't raise him to a proper status in the court because he's a bastard. So instead, they train him up and he essentially becomes an assassin. So because he's working for the crown, he has a lot of milestones in his life because he's growing up in the palace, but he also can't deviate from that loyalty, which is to King Shrewd, who took him in. So because he's got that sense of duty, that overwhelming sense of duty, he's also trying to live his life. And a lot of the times that sense of duty overrides what he personally wants in life. And so we see in the first 2 books those things really coming to a head. And then in this book, it's really the trauma of those things and how he's trying to heal from them. And he also makes a bond with a wolf called Night Eyes. And Night Eyes and Fitz's relationship is absolutely incredible. The way that they support each other and the way that they are distinctly human and wolf is so clever, and I absolutely adore it. And Night Eyes is now kind of almost becoming a little bit more human focused in that he's thinking of the future, whereas initially he was a wolf that just thought in the present, like in the present moment. And it's actually funny because it's flipped it almost, and Fitz doesn't want to think into the future because he's on this quest, on this mission that is essentially a revenge quest, and he is keen to not live at the end of it because he doesn't see the possibility for himself. So he's trying not to think past what he needs to do. So I love that fascinating dichotomy between the 2 characters, and I also just love all the side characters that are built up around Fitz in this book. And it took a while to get to the main quest because Robin Hobb basically doesn't rush her books, and I think some people might find that frustrating because yes, I guess it can seem slow, but in all honesty, her writing style and her intention are incredible, and I just eat up every word. I lap it up. I love it. So if you want a book to read that is a fantasy book that won't rush you and it is worth sitting down and immersing yourself in like a nice hot bath, this series is for you. It does have pain, it does have trauma, but it does have moments of amusement and humor and connection and loyalty, and it's so good. But that brings me to the end of my wrap up. I'm sure you'll guess that I'm going to give this 5 stars. I've got 100 pages left of this, which I will easily finish. Now that I'm right at the end, Robin Hobb tends to write her endings fairly succinctly. So it's a bit of build up to get to this point, but then the ending is like bang, bang, bang. So given that this is the end of a trilogy, I anticipate that it's not going to take me that long to read the last 100 pages because I've been thinking about this all day. The fact that this has been on my mind, I'm going to finish it in the next few days. But that is my April wrap up. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you had any 5 stars or even 4-star reads during the month of April, please let me know because I'm hitting 3 stars, 3.5 stars, some 4s, and then 5s are mostly rereads for me, so I want to find as many 5 stars as possible. But again, thank you so much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.